Bam.
Good afternoon. This is Mario Giuliani, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
I dig it that you're doing this with me. You were on once before. Everybody, this is Mario Giuliani. He's the city manager of Benicia. I did a little bit of legwork, just a little bit, and I looked around. So I'm trying to understand better what a city manager does and what the qualifications look like. And let me tell you, I am so impressed with your background, your resume, your experience. I don't know who we'd pick. Someone from Benicia with your pedigree. There can't be that many of you in town. You're fantastically qualified for this job. And goddamn, I bet people are hard on you about it.
Well, I appreciate that. It's sometimes there's a lot of anonymity when it comes to being a city manager. Most people don't know what a city manager is. If you ask most people, they would think that the chief executive of a city is your locally elected mayor. And that's the case in a small percentage of American cities, primarily your large ones. But for most cities, it's the city manager form of government. You can think of the mayor and council as your board of directors and the chief executive officer as your city manager. Yeah, I appreciate that. What I think is most rare is not someone with my qualifications. I think you see that in a lot of places. What's rare and what I'm most blessed for is the ability to have grown up here, to have graduated Benicia High School here, to have spent much of my career in Benicia, and to be able to be the chief executive officer, the city manager in the city in which I grew up, in which I live, and where I'm raising my family. That's rare and special.
It is when you are from a small town, even a mid-sized town, and you adore it. That's what Benicia is, everybody. It's that kind of a town where, look, I don't live there anymore, but I graduated there, grew up there, probably committed about 1,000 youthful crimes there, being a rascal.
Don't worry, Pete, the statute of limitations is passed. You're good. You're welcome to come back anytime. So
I come back all the time. Right. But it is a wonderful experience living there, and to have someone who truly gets it, who truly loves it. Yeah, that has got to be a rare thing. Does it change how you do the job?
I don't know if it changes how one does the job. What I do think is it makes me as a city manager relatable to the constituents in which we serve.
Okay.
And I think, when we spoke last, right, Benicia has been going through this period of challenge and change.
Right.
And when you have to go into a room and explain to people the cost of services is going up, or worse, the service is going away.
Right.
When you are also a beneficiary of that service, when you too are the one paying for that service as a resident, when you're raising your children here, that resonates with the people in that room. You're not just some executive that lives in a faraway town that commutes in and this is a job. And I can tell you, having gone through the last 2.5 years of some challenge in Benicia, that goes a long way of kind of building credibility with your community.
The last time we had Greg Brooks with us, and Greg sort of does the advising of guys like you for a living, and he could not stop saying, Mario, I'm so impressed. Mario, wow, I didn't realize that. And he was just talking about how well he thought, and he's a pro, you were running the city. And then, Valero does pop the cork and changes things, right? And so that doesn't mean you're running the city poorly, but it does take this challenging position you guys were in, and it makes it a lot more unknown. How about that?
So, because I've lived here for so long, there's a lot of folks in town that know who I am, and they'll see me and they'll ask, well, how are you doing? Especially with the news of Valero. And for the benefit of the audience, to kind of recap, right? Valero, Benicia refinery, the largest employer, major tax contributor to Benicia, announced in April of 25 their intent to idle and cease operations, basically close. Well, prior to that, right, for the 2 years prior to that announcement, Benicia has been dealing with kind of a structural budget deficit, dealing with longstanding lack of funding for our infrastructure, our roads, our parks, our facilities. And so when I took over as city manager, basically I was like, we got to stop kicking the can down the road. And so for 2+ years, we were really trying to address that. And so when the Valero happens, and people come up and they ask how you're doing, and my answer has been, you know, I enjoy a good challenge. I just wish that all of the challenge didn't happen at the same time, and that's what it feels like a little bit, especially in light of the Valero news. But
Yeah.
if there's any community that is equipped to deal with adversity and be resilient, it's our community. And this is just another challenge we have to face, and we're meeting it. And we're gonna be facing a storm. It's gonna be difficult, but I think at the end of the day, Benicia is gonna get through this, and we will be a better community. 10 years from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, Benicia is even better than where we were in
All right.
25 and 26.
The other day we had Steve Young on, and he's the mayor of Benicia. Everybody, I'll put that link in for that episode. But for sure, watch the Mario's earlier episode so you can see like just the general communication process that Mario makes, and how he explains to everybody, and also, the problems that any town has. My dad was the mayor of of Capitola, and he was on the city council, and he would have the most interesting things. He's like, these are the problems that I can't solve. He's like, for example, fresh water. Land. There is no more land, and there's so many old buildings. And my dad was the architect for the whole town. I mean, there's other architects there, but if you went on a tour of Capitola with them, which is a great thing to do, he's like, I built that one, I built that one, I rebuilt that one, I rebuilt that one twice, and then all over town. And so he knew that town intimately, and he's like, there's all these problems. Like, I can't move people fast enough. And so some of these are because of where the town is. Capitola's on the edge of a mountain range on a beach, right? It's limited. Benicia is surrounded on, I don't know, 3 sides by water. And there's a lot of challenges that are just inherent to where a place is. What are some of those things for you that you're like, I know we had a water main issue, right? Like getting water into the town is hard because you can't just put a funnel in the strait and just draw it
Right.
out, right? So what are some of those things that we just don't understand because we're not from Benicia about what makes it hard to manage that? And all towns have these things, but what are Benicia's?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of set it up when you almost referenced Benicia, and I've commented to members of the community as a part of our challenge, and it's also a charm. We are almost like an island. We are surrounded by water, and to our south and to our east, and then to the west, we have Vallejo, and then we have an urban growth boundary, and so we're
Uh-huh.
really tucked in. Now, the charm of that is it insulates us to have that small town feel. We do
Mm-hmm.
not like certainly in communities in Southern California, but even in parts of the Bay Area, where you're driving and you don't know what town you're in. Well, that's not the case
Yeah.
in Benicia. You're in
Right.
Benicia because when you leave Benicia, there's nothing. You're there in the water, or you're driving on the freeway to go to Vallejo or Fairfield. So that helps a sense of identity. But what that also, the challenge is, we're a built out city, and there's not the opportunity to necessarily kind of build out. So we have to
Right.
build up, and we have to build kind of within infill development. And so we have to be really thoughtful and strategic on how we do that. And it limits our kind of revenue potential when you are constrained in that fashion. That said,
Mhm.
we're one hell of a place to live. And
Gorgeous.
when you can have multiple places in town and have amazing water views, that's rare and that's special.
Yeah,
And that's something worth protecting.
it sure is. It's gorgeous there. The Nobody wants to pay taxes. It does cost a certain amount to run a city. When Valero leaves, I've heard the number 10 million, but you and I both know like that impact is going to be bigger because the secondary, tertiary, quaternary businesses associated with that are also going to change, right? Their presence. It also is going to cause some level of exodus of people that are making 6 figures. Look, you can replace those folks over time, but there's just a lot of upheaval. And then I did some hasty math, and I'm not saying this is the exact number, but the better part of $1 million of catering is going to disappear, right? Like these are significant problems for businesses that if you took 10% of the catering business out of any catering business,
Sure.
that's nasty. That's nasty business. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I know you know this. So what
Well,
do
to
you
make
do?
it more dramatic, I mean, you
Oh,
commented
good.
that we've done a study, and we know that it's going to impact Benicia significantly, and to kind of further um, define that 10 million, we know that it's over $7 million that's going to hit our general fund. And for the benefit of your audience, when any city talks about a general fund, they're talking about the pot of money that supports police and fire and parks and public works and library and recreation. And our budget's about $60 million annually. So that's what we have each year to kind of invest back in the community to provide those services. And so we're going to lose over $7 million with the loss of Valero to support those services. We will lose almost $3 million for our utilities. That's our water and wastewater. Benicia is rare in that we're one of those few communities in California that has a municipal water and wastewater. And so that's a financial hit. And so all told, it's over $10 million to the city of Benicia in totality. That's just to the corporation of Benicia.
Yeah.
The economic impact to the region with Valero's loss is about $128 million annually, of which 75 million is probably localized in Benicia. So you talked about the $1 million loss of catering. That's a fraction of the lost economic activity that's going to happen in our industrial park, as well as in our hotels and our eateries. That's going to be a major impact that this community, and that's the storm it's going to feel. That's the storm that I'm talking about that's coming. Now, what's important to know, and our finance director made this quote, and I want to credit him, Jeff Schutte. Anytime we're talking about such a substantive change, whether it's in Benicia, any community, the country, or the state, right? There's this sense of dread and the sky is falling. And as significant as this challenge is, the sky is not falling in Benicia. It's just a different color, right? You've got a red sky in the morning, sailor heed warning, like a storm's coming, but we'll get through it. And the reason I have confidence in that is we know that Valero has partnered with a company called Signature Development. They announced that partnership a week after they announced their closure. Signature is a well-respected development firm out of the Bay Area. They're already working on plans on redeveloping that 900 acres for which Valero owns. We know we're going to have additional development with Rose Estates on kind of the northern gateway of Benicia. We're going to see probably additional development by our waterfront on Amport's property called the Yuba. We know that we're going to see probably the first housing development on Jefferson Street that has been tied up in unnecessary litigation. In fact, the Court of Appeals heard that today, lasted all of 7 minutes. This is just how ridiculous and asinine this lawsuit is. It took the Court of Appeals 7 minutes to hear oral arguments. That is just an illustration of just how shameful it is that we have individuals that have litigated this type of development. And it's indicative that yes, there are challenges, but we're well on our way to seeing building again in Benicia. And I think that will help to kind of be the catalyst for the new revenue that will follow Valero's exit.
We in Benicia look to our west and go, look at Valero. Oh boy, and the cry we all have heard is we don't want to end up like Valero. And in this case, I'm making myself a Benician, but that is a legitimate concern. Now, Steve Young said we're not Valero, but everybody can say that. How do we not act like Valero? How do we get things right that Valero hasn't? I'm picking on Valero because there they are. They've struggled, right? I know and love a lot of people from Valero, so this is not the people, but the city has struggled, and we all can think of specific stories of these things happening.
Well, for the benefit of the larger audience, Vallejo is, our neighbor. It's one of the largest cities in Solano County. It was not that long ago, before the 1960s, where Benicia was not an affluent community. In fact, we were one of the poorest communities in Solano County. And a long time Benicia resident, I kind of view her as a matriarch of our town, Bonnie Silvera. And she served on multiple boards and commissions in Benicia. And she was often fond of saying when she was growing up, and in fact, when she was here in high school in the office in which I sit, because this was the former high school of Benicia, she would tell people she wasn't from Benicia. She said she was from Vallejo, because
Mm.
Vallejo was kind of the gold star of Solano County. It was the vibrant community, right? And I think their tagline was the city of opportunity, right? It was the engine of Vallejo was Mare Island.
Yeah.
And so when we comment today, there's a little bit of recency bias of like, well, Benicia's so great and Vallejo is not. Well,
Right.
why is that? Well, a couple of things happened in both communities. When Benicia lost the arsenal and Vallejo was home to the Navy, Benicia was home to the Army. And in the 60s, the arsenal closed. And in that moment, Benicia, being one of the poorest communities in Solano County, if you were to ask the people, they would have told you Benicia's best days are behind it. We have lost the
Mm.
arsenal. There's no future for us. And yet what happened? With the closure of the arsenal led to the creation of Benicia Industries, which led to the development of the Benicia Industrial Park, which landed Humble Oil that was completed in 1968.
Mm.
That was built. That led to the Southampton's housing development in the late 70s and 80s and 90s. And by the time we got into the late 80s and 90s, the poorest community in Solano County became the most affluent community and the most highly educated community in an entire county. And then what happened in the 90s, you saw in Vallejo, Mare Island closes down. Now, Mare Island and Valero are not one and the same. Mare Island was not only the single largest kind of tax producer for Vallejo, it was also the largest employer of Vallejo. I think, there are 100,000 jobs, I think, came out of Mare Island. That's not the case with Vallejo. Excuse me, Valero.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
the closure of Mare Island, everyone likes to point to, is similar to the loss of Valero and Benicia, and they're not one and the same. The degree is vastly different. Yet, this is a telling story of a community that doesn't come together, that doesn't row in the same direction, that points fingers at one another, and can't get along. That is the story
Mm.
of Vallejo. That has been the story of Vallejo for a generation. Contrast that with Benicia, a
Mm.
community that, when faced with adversity, does the exact opposite. They come together. They believe in themselves. They say, yes, we are going to support our elected officials. We are going to listen to our elected officials, and we are going to invest in ourselves to make sure that the quality of life that we have here in Benicia stays that way. And in fact, we're going to do what we can to make it better. And that is something that can be emulated in all communities. And so that's really is the lesson between the two communities. Like, do you come together or do you tear yourself apart?
Love it. I love it. When all this news breaks, there's a lot of chatter outside of Benicia, outside of Solano County, outside of California, and there's a lot of doom saying the same thing. We're not looking at Vallejo now, but now they're not even seeing Benicia. They're just saying the name Vallejo. I don't know how or Valero. I don't know how many times I saw stories about all the bad things are going to happen and very little. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because I know you. And I'm like, well, let's go to the source. Let's talk to Steve and let's talk to Mario and see what this is like. So when you speak to the nation, like in this case, if
I
in
like it,
theory
Pete.
you can do
You're
that.
nationwide now. Like this, love it.
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah, we do things around here. But what do you have to say to them? Because so way back when, a couple of years ago, when our vice president wouldn't go to the border down in Texas, I got in my truck and I drove down there. I went to Del Rio, Texas, and I talked to the judge in charge of all of the immigration that was going on. Because that's what you do, right? Like you go out and you talk to the folks, like, this is your problem. What are you doing? And he was awesome. He was great. And he didn't have all the talking points. He just had reality. And so, what is the reality? What do we need to hear in the big world about Benicia, and what are we getting wrong?
I think it's important to know, and we just talked a moment ago about kind of pointing fingers. And sadly, we live in an environment today where there is a real politics of adversity and
Right.
acrimony, and there's um, if you don't agree, you're an enemy. And unfortunately, as someone in public service, right, that has dedicated my life and career in the service of the public, that's incredibly disheartening, right? That
Right.
we've lost the statesmanship, if you will, of our politics. Yet,
Mm.
despite that, the announcement from Valero led to the governor charging the California Energy Commission to kind of put forward a plan on how to address this. And what that has done is given me an invitation from the Energy Commission as kind of a local official in Benicia to participate in kind of that stakeholder group.
Hmm.
And I can say that, as the city manager of a small town in Benicia, to be in meetings up in Sacramento where you have national labor leaders, when you have
Mm.
directors of state departments, you have professors from major universities and think tanks from all over the country. And I have a seat at that table to listen to these people, to listen to leaders of organizations of environmental justice. And we're all around the table, leaders of various air districts throughout the state, offering our thoughts, our opinions on developing state policy on how to deal with the kind of mid-transition of where we are with petrochemical. It's in those moments that I feel most proud and heartened. This
Good.
effort is led by the vice chair, Siva Gunda. And so for members of your audience, oftentimes when we think of, you know, bureaucrats or those in state government or federal government, we see the president, we see the secretary, we see the people on television. But there are scores of people, citizens, residents of our community, of our state, that are working tirelessly to try to solve the problem of, in this case, supplying sufficient fuel supply to the people of California. And I can tell you that Siva Gunda has brought a very disparate group of people that do not see eye to eye, and yet we're able to come together and try to facilitate policy that will make improvement to the state. And that's the type of leadership that we need, and it's the type of work ethic that's important, that your nationwide audience know that you have good people that are trying to solve a problem, that are not politicizing it. And that's what they should hold fast to, that there are good people that are working hard to try to address what is a very difficult problem of the economy of refining fuel in California, and making it work and providing that supply. And it's difficult.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smart energy people in this place. There's a lot of people who are smart on policy, and if we choose to, we can dig around. You can see interviews with those folks, and there are a lot of brilliant minds working on this problem, figuring out how to balance the transition away from petrochemicals and towards a future that has less demand on that. And yeah, these are not easy problems to solve. How does that all impact Benicia, though, right? Like these statewide policies you mentioned, I'll just say the word lawfare because I think that's a fair way to describe these things. One of the things we love in the Bay Area is the courtroom. We get in there a lot, and it has this unique effect. I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but it tends to ossify the region into a very conservative, small c conservative place that doesn't withstand change. And I think we can name every town has some kind of element of that in the Bay Area, and we fight. And look, Southern California, we have it down here too. I mean, if you want to take down a dam, get ready for 10 years of lawsuits. And so is that the pace of progress? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. But then again, here's the thing great about all of America. Everybody has a right, and everybody has a right to stand in front of the man and say, I don't think this is right. And so some amount of this we have to withstand. So what does this mean for Benicia? What is the state? What is the county? What is the nation or federal government owe this little town that's like, hey, this was a big part of what we have in terms of revenue?
Well, I certainly think that Benicia is an important piece. We still have local jurisdiction here in Benicia, and so to that end, I think that the property owner, as the applicant, if they would like to have different types of uses on that site, it's important that they're not only talking to the state, but they're talking to the city. And I think that having all of those entities communicating with one another is very helpful, and hopefully that avoids any type of need for litigation. And I think that there's certainly a desire for Benicia to secure our long-term future, that Valero has made a decision that they no longer want to use that site to refine crude oil. Okay, then it's time for us to turn the page and begin writing the next chapter of Benicia along with Valero. But what that means is it's new industrial, it's new commercial, it may even be new residential. And so in order to do that, let's be efficient in how we go down that road. And that's why I have confidence that they partnered with Signature Development Group, and they didn't wait 20 years to hire that firm, right?
Yeah.
They did it they announced it a week after their closure. And so that does give me hope that there's common ground and an interest in an existing property owner. They too want to see a change on that site. And to be clear, that 900 acres is worth about $1 billion right now.
Yeah.
If you're able to redevelop that and take one company and convert it into multiple companies, multiple uses of commercial activity, industrial activity, possibly new residential, you can take $1 billion value and turn it into $3 billion. Like that's when I look at Benicia's horizon and think of what can happen in the 2030s and 2040s. That's why there is promise. And you can do that without Benicia being home to a refinery. And having home to a refinery is something that has given us great prosperity in Benicia. And it's a resident and city manager, I am grateful for Humboldt Oil and Exxon and the work that Valero has done. And they have made the decision to move on. Well, now it's our time to take the prosperity that they have given us, turn the page, and kind of double that investment. Sure. and turn Benicia's page, because now we can be a waterfront community with no refinery. Well, if you think our property value was expensive before, gosh, can you imagine what it's going to be in the 2030s?
Yeah.
Right.
New Tiburon and stuff. Yeah. We still have pipelines. We still have storage facilities for fuel. Obviously, we have to put this stuff somewhere because we're still going to need gas at a minimum for a long time. Would the city allow like more tanks to be built, because capacity to store is going to be hugely profitable? Look, I'm not trying to put a refinery there, but we do have a lot of space to put some tanks on.
Yeah, well, they already have existing tanks, and they have a marine terminal, right? Benicia is one of those rare places that has a deep water port. This is a conversation that Valero needs to have with the state and the city. Ultimately, I don't see that as a long-term solution for Valero as a property owner. That's not something that they typically do. They're not in the business of being a marine terminal. And I don't think that's the long-term vision of Signature Development. Now, it may be an interest of the state to have that, but I think that's more of the short term than the long term. Yeah. And so it may well be, Pete, that you can actually align the needs of the state of California, the needs and wants of the city of Benicia, and then the kind of property development group and ownership, which is Valero and Signature Development. You know what? I see a path where you can find alignment for all three of those entities.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of these problems are not Benicia's problems. Benicia's problem, among the other things we've already discussed, is the fact that, we have to replace this source of revenue and all of the great jobs that it provided. I mean, who doesn't want to drive 2 minutes to their work? So that's that. It's not Benicia's job to figure out where the asphalt is going to come from Northern California. That's a state and federal job. Is that fair to say that? I mean, do you guys need to fix that problem? If the state's like, we'd like you guys to open an asphalt plant in addition to, whatever. I mean, at some point, this isn't Benicia's problem.
We began the conversation earlier about talking about all the challenges that Benicia faces, and you've highlighted a couple. And I think it's important to know that I believe like 60% of the asphalt that Northern California uses comes out of the Valero Benicia plant, as they have their own asphalt plant. 10% of the fuel that California uses basically comes out of the Valero refinery.
Right.
These are consequences and impacts that we in Benicia will face. It is not my job to fix it. I have other problems to address, but they are problems
Yeah.
to be sure. And I guarantee you that there are a lot of people in Sacramento that are trying to figure that out, because that's an issue. What
Yeah.
that's going to do for the cost of road construction, what that's going to do to the local economy if gas prices, spike and are well above, and they're already higher than most of the nation, but to lose that much supply. And we're only talking about the loss of now Phillips 66, which closed a few months ago, and then Valero in the coming weeks. What happens if we lose another refinery or another?
Yeah.
California then becomes in a crisis mode, and that's one of the things that the Energy Commission and others are trying to work and stabilize.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These are
But
big,
don't have
big
an answer
problems.
yet. Don't have an answer
Yeah.
yet. I mean, the legislature is working on it. There are a lot of good people that are working on it, but it's fluid, and it's real. It is absolutely a real challenge.
Just to extend the point that this isn't a Benicia problem, it's a city and federal problem, whatever. There are internal to the California state, there are pipelines that run north and south through the valleys and move crude. And if you don't push enough crude through those pipelines, they fail in a way that is catastrophic and will be awful. And so we're trying to solve that problem too. That doesn't sound like a Benicia problem because it's not. It's it's in Kern County and other counties.
Well, and so one of the things, and probably the biggest success that came from the stakeholder group that I highlighted earlier, led by the Energy Commission, and the legislation that was passed at the end of the legislative session in September of last year, was kind of legislative action to speed up the permitting process in Kern County.
Yes.
To your point, Pete,
and
I think most people don't understand this, there are a lot of refineries that use San Joaquin crude oil.
Right.
The vast majority of it comes out of Kern County. If you don't have enough crude supply to fill the volume in those pipes fail. If those pipes aren't able to deliver crude to certain refineries, those refineries fail. And Valero,
keep doing it
Valero was a major recipient of San Joaquin crude. So now you have to figure out, well, where is that volume going to go? There is a complexity there that far surpasses just the impact here in Benicia. There's a complex network at play here, and it's all interrelated. And it's again, it just adds to the challenge of supplying California with the energy it needs to move forward.
Yeah, we had Professor Rector from UC Berkeley on the show, and they've, just for everybody watching, they've mapped or attempted to map the best they can so far all of the places where gas and oil just come up, and where they should cap wells and where they don't cap wells. And if you don't move this stuff, it's coming and you're not stopping it, right? And so here we are in hippy dippy California trying to figure out how to get away from this stuff, and it's literally erupting out of the ground for us, right? And so he's trying to solve, it's, when you say it's complex, I don't know if folks understand just how complex this problem is, because we're compelled to deal with this problem because it's nature coming out of the ground and giving us the opposite of what we want. And so it creates a lot of problems. Let's I'm going to get into some opportunity stuff. Now, I happen to know a guy who looks a lot like this guy, who's trying to start a film studio in Benicia. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and this is a Benicia concern, it's a California concern, but California's film industry has been retarded in its growth and recovery, partly because we love to say no to stuff. Now, I know Benicia's probably not got a film permit office, but how do we and we'll just use Pete as an example, but how do you take the city and make it a place? My policy I want the policy to be this: we run out of red tape. Benicia is the best place in the nation to make films, right? That's my goal. So how viable is that approach? I mean, and I'm not trying to put you down on any kind of permanent answers. We're just having a conversation about something that may happen in the future. But how do you make Benicia a place where businesses come and thrive?
So prior to becoming city manager and assistant city manager in Benicia, I spent a lot of time in economic development as the economic development manager. And my philosophy was always yes if.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, when someone comes in, they say, I have a great idea for a business and here's my application. The first answer is no, because. it's a mindset change if instead it's like, well, yes, if these things can occur, right? It's an entirely different mindset on what's making something possible.
Mhm.
So I think that's the first step. There are
Okay.
other things though to recognize in that not all business is compatible for certain locations.
Sure.
And so, I'm certainly a big believer that we need to be business friendly. It is the business community that really supports much of the services we provide. And I'm going to deviate to share this one point. All of the property tax in Benicia, and this includes the property tax of Valero, generates about $21 million. The
Yes.
cost for just police and fire alone is $24 million, which means that the single largest revenue source in Benicia comes from homes, right? Property tax. That doesn't even pay for police and fire. Where do we get the rest of our money? Businesses. We get it from the sales tax they produce. The other taxes our businesses produce. So it's important to know that business really is the entity that supports a lot of the services in our community. So it's important that we're respectful, appreciative, and business friendly. That said, you also want to make sure that our job in the city is to plan accordingly. And we need to make sure that just because you have a great business idea, it doesn't, you don't locate it where you're going to create, um, atrophy or harm in that surrounding area. And so
Mm-hmm.
you specifically noted something about, filming. Great. My question is, yes, if, and like, where's it located? Right? What are you going to do? Is it going to upset someone in a residential neighborhood? You're not going to want to put a film studio in a residential neighborhood, but we
Right.
have, a large industrial park. We have other places where, historic district that is industrial in nature could be a perfect setting for, some type of film studio. So you just have to find the right location and you have to ask the right questions. And, I'm also, I think I've shared this story before. We had a company that's in Benicia now, Mare Island Tap House. And years ago, when I was doing economic development, Kent Fortner called and he had an operation on Mare Island, and he was trying to move, and he was having a difficult time with the kind of water at Vallejo. He threw up his
Mm-hmm.
hands, and he calls me, and I'd met him before at a Solano Economic Development Corporation event and later Rotary. So we made that contact, and this is also important for your audience. This is literally how business happens, right? It's making connections with people and socializing. So it gives me a call and he says, "Hey Mario, I'm done with Vallejo. I can't get this answer done on the water. I want to move. I want to find me a place in Benicia. I'm gonna move my operation there." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Tell me more about the problem that you're having." And so he tells me, and it's water related. It's very technical. It has to do with kind of sewer capacity for his brewery. And so he tells me. I call the folks, Jeff Gregory, who runs our water, and I said, "Hey Jeff, here's the problem. Walk me through this." So he explains it to me. So then I pick up the phone and I call Melissa Morton. Melissa Morton is the general manager over in Vallejo for the water. Melissa Morton used to be the public works director in Benicia. And I call Melissa and I said, "Hey, Kent over at Mare Island Brewing is having this problem. I talked to Jeff. She knows Jeff. I said, I think you guys can fix it. Can you follow up and take care of it?" She says, "Yeah, no problem." Talks to her people. A couple days later, Kent gives me a call and he says, "Never in my wildest imagination did I think I would call the city of Benicia and ask to locate in your town because I'm having a problem in Vallejo, and you call Vallejo and fix my problem so I can stay in Mare Island." And I tell
Yeah.
Kent, I said, "Kent, your company name is Mare Island Brewing Company. You belong on Mare Island. My job is to make sure that your business is successful. And someday you may need to expand, and then you'll think of Benicia." I share that story because, again, it's yes, if. Sometimes moving to Benicia isn't the best thing for the business. But
Mm-hmm.
if we're in the public sector, right, our job is to help the public, and sometimes that's helping a neighboring city. But I love telling that story because I think it's how we should interact in public service.
Yeah. And there is now a location on First Street that
And
backfilled. Yeah.
there is now
It's,
during COVID in 2020, we now have the Mare Island Tap House
well,
in Benicia, and it's downtown Benicia. It doesn't brew beer. I'd still love to have a brewery, but it's a great tap house. It's a great location, and so now you have the synergy of the at the ferry building. For those that don't know, there's a ferry building in Valero, and you can get Mare Island Tap House there. And you can go across the water to Mare Island itself, to what used to be the coal sheds, and it's a beautifully restored place, and that's where actually the brewery itself exists for Mare Island. And the third piece is now here in Benicia, where we have a tap house. And to me, it's a great story.
yeah, and it is a Benicia story, though. Thanks for doing that, by the way. You're right. These things happen because these things happen. My niece works there in Benicia, and then I worked there when I was a knucklehead kid and when it was First Street Cafe. So, like these things, that's how you
Yeah.
build a culture in a town. I was at Benicia Grill and just having a conversation with my friend Kurt, and we were talking about how do we make this boxing movie that we're going to make in town because it's about Benicia. At least it happens in Benicia.
I studied
And
that
then
when I
David,
was in
yeah,
college at UC Davis. Yeah,
well,
I had no idea.
yeah,
I lived here and I went to UC Davis, and gosh, I forget and I now forget the course that I was in, but it was this, prize bare knuckled
yeah.
fight on a barge outside of Benicia. I had no idea. And I learned this in college, and it was the town I grew up in.
And I don't know about when you went through Benicia schools, but I went through and we learned about this thing when we were kids and everything. But not everybody remembers that. Like how many Beniциans realize it's the second oldest city in California? Like these are things that we know, but or we're exposed to, we don't retain. Either way, yeah, we're going to do this movie, right? And of course, we want to bring that business to Benicia and all the things that come with that. And that's a lot of fun. I forgot my question about that.
So you were working
Yeah,
to develop this movie. I
yeah.
interrupted you. So
Well, no, we're working to develop the movie. That's the main thing, and it's going to happen in Benicia. And I guess that's exciting enough, just having that there. And we would love for you guys. So I'll tell you a story about Mark Walter, who runs Film Mare Island. He was talking about Vallejo, and they had a project that came into town, and there's a little bit of business stuff in this too. So um, the company that's trying to do the filming needed to get a permit to hang a temporary chandelier to do a set construction, and Vallejo could not be bothered to do it in a timely fashion. And so what did they do? They just did it anyhow and said, hopefully you guys don't catch us, and if you do, we'll pay the fine. But that's that yes if, right? Like, yeah, of course, like let's get these things. Let's not slow the production up. Let's be a productive place. California, the state, wants film industries to thrive, and so if Pete and his pals like David Batchelor, that's what I was going to talk about. David Batchelor happens to be at Benicia Grill, and his buddies are in the other corner, and they overhear us talking about this project. And my buddy Kurt, with his big loud mouth, is like, you should find the guy that built the Harold Bray statue. I bet that guy would know how to get things done. And then David stands up, he's like, I'm that guy. And so now this thing is turned in not only into this film project, but also potentially what we're hoping for is a film industry. Because if we can nail that, if we can create the professional capacity similar to what they have on Mare Island, the state is supposed to be funneling projects to the other counties. But the big problem is it's hard to do. And if we can build that capacity, one feature film, one TV series a year will be funneled into, in this case, Solano County, and hopefully in Benicia, maybe Mare Island. We're friends with those guys. But that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of tradespeople. And what we're hoping to do is have an education branch where we leverage the high school, but also or high schools, I should say, but also Solano DVC, and build a group of people that know the film industry inside and out, so that we can take that and have good paying jobs, professional, a lot of them union jobs, right? Because if you have the right size of project. So there is potential here. And I'm just talking about some dumb project that Pete and David are working on, right? Like we hope it'll happen, but here where we are now to paying $1 of taxes, we're a million miles from that yet. But that is some of the potential that's right there, and it's already cooking. As long as we can figure how all the pieces fit together.
Well, again, I think you highlighted, you're at a local diner. and you're speaking, and this is also kind of the charm of a small town, right? And then within earshot, you have someone who is, the chairperson of the Benicia Community Foundation and was instrumental in landing the Harold Bray. And for the benefit of the audience, Harold Bray was the uh, and currently the lone and last survivor of the USS Indianapolis, and we were able, and I should say we, I mean the community came together to create this beautiful bronze statue, and we're able
Yeah.
to dedicate it for Harold at the corner of First and Military, an appropriate location for Harold while he was still alive. And I think that's a
Yeah.
testament to the work of Benicia. But it comes back to, hey, this small town and within earshot, and now you're able to kind of create something. The other thing that
Yeah.
I like to say that's related to that, and not that we want to continue to pick on Vallejo, but this is true for any large city. You reach a certain point and there are just layers there.
Right.
The beauty of Benicia is you can reach the city manager anytime, meet me with coffee every week. You can reach out to any one of our 5 elected officials, and probably within 24 to 48 hours, they'll meet you for coffee, or they'll pick up the
Right.
phone. You can talk to our police chief, our fire chief. You can go in and meet with our public works director. Rare as citizens to be able to go directly to the people that
Yeah.
are making decisions, and you can do that in Benicia. And that's what's so special, that the people that are implementing policy, making policy, you have a direct line to them. And that's why I've always felt the best government is the one that's most local, right? The
Yeah.
further you get removed, when it gets to county, to state, and federal, they're too far away. You can't touch them, you can't feel them, and you can't make that connection. But in local government, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. And most of the change that will happen can happen right here, at the local level, wherever here is. Go talk to the mayor, go talk to the fire chief, whatever these people are. We can all complain about stuff. And the last episode we talked about, I like to talk about they oughta, they oughta ramp right here. Well, go down to the city and say, what do we got to do to name another, let's get something else. Surely we have other heroes besides Harold Bray. How do we, well, go to the city and start talking to them and figure out how to lean on that problem, because that's the best and most direct way to solve these things.
Yep.
All right, so we've talked a lot about all these things. I sort of asked you a million questions, but what do you want to say or need to say about any of this? What questions should I have asked you? Because this is a big, complex thing. We could have this conversation again, not talk about any of the things we talked about, and still not cover all of it.
Yeah, it's. I guess this is really kind of zeroing in on the Benicia audience, for those that will kind of listen, and for those in the grander audience, I would just say, you give me this grace as I speak to my fellow Benicia residents, and I highlighted it, Pete. The loss of Valero is indeed a significant challenge, and likely the most significant challenge for Benicia since the exit of the Army when the arsenal closed in the 1960s. And just as I shared with you earlier, in what felt like the darkest days for Benicia, led to the greatest opportunity for prosperity for this town. And so as we look to 2026 and the consequences of Valero closing, I would say to my fellow Benicia residents, the sky is not falling, that we will get through this, and that as good as Benicia is today, we will be better in the future. And we are also have been empowered with this, that we're living in a time that we should feel quite honored and blessed, because we are the residents and group of people that get to write the chapter of the town's history, right? Instead of just living here, we get to actually write what this town is going to look like for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And that is a privilege.
Have you ever seen the murals inside the brewery building?
So it's funny you mentioned that, because David Batchelor
Yeah.
had commented on that, and I have. It was years ago. In fact, little Benicia history. So Tia Teresa's used to be the Mexican restaurant tied to the next to the brewery, for which the building you're talking about, and that was the first place I got when I turned 21. And I had my first alcoholic beverage. I remember it today. It was a Long Island iced tea. I'd never had one, and all it took was one for me to feel the effects. But that was the last time when I was 21 that I saw those murals, because it's been closed for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, anybody who wants to see at least some of what that looks like, I'm gonna put in here the link for She Don't Know Me. Right before Bon Jovi, like the minute before Bon Jovi exploded into national prominence, they released this video, and it was filmed at Tia Teresa slash the
That,
brewery.
that's right.
Um, one of the things we want to do, and this is another area where I don't know if the city has capacity, but we would love to get better at grants so that we can help filmmakers make things in Benicia. Because there's, the grant writing places, they have money to give out, and if you don't ask for it, they can't give it to you. And a lot of times they have money that goes unallocated. And so I want to get the city and us better at that, so we can say, hey, filmmaker, why don't you make something on your way up to go do something else, and then give them that affinity that if I'm going to really go for it here, that Mare Island hook, we're like, you know what, I got my first shot, do something in Benicia. And so of course I'm going to come back and do whatever it is, Transformers 27, Revenge of whatever. but yeah, I mean, I want to not just plant seeds when we do these things, and hopefully other businesses are the same way. There's a lot of very, very wonderful people that I know that own businesses in Benicia, and it's just, how do we continue to think bigger, create more space to do things, and the capacity at the city level. Now, is it wrong for me to hope that you guys have a grant writer that could help flatten the curve with this? Is this something that we need to, how do I come to you guys to be valuable, to create this? Because the refinery leaving creates an enormous amount of opportunity. And if we could build something, gosh, I would love it to be a film studio. How do I best do that with the city? What is your guidance to me on how I approach you guys? That's what I want to ask.
So I would say that the first, unrelated to a grant, right? If you have a desire for a business opportunity, it's Signature Development Group, because they're the ones that are working on the development plan with Valero, right? Okay. So they're the property. So the first contact is not the city of Benicia. It's, hey, sitting down with Signature and saying, this is an idea that I have, and make some time to talk about how that can be incorporated into their redevelopment. If it's outside of the Valero property and it's just somewhere else in the city, and you're looking in particular for grants, related to some municipal activity. For example, there may be grant funding that can only go to a municipality. And so, we're partnering with a company called Townsend. They're helping with the Air District grant that we're going to be putting in to support, city services and projects, and they're going to help us with that. Once that project is done, we want to leverage them to look at other types of grants to support, park projects and road projects, infrastructure program projects, if you will. So I think that's something new for Benicia. And so they're a very powerful resource. I would send you to them and say, hey, they may have identified grants. How do we partner together to do that?
No, that's great. I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing you said. This is what we do. This is how I help you with the business development side. We're glad to go do our homework. And it's not just me, everybody. I don't want to give the impression that I'm doing this by myself. David Batchelor, John Leon Guerrero, there's a bunch of us all working on this problem. There's a number of them are longtime Benicia residents. Anything else you want to say? I know when I was up in town last week, it was like, hey, man, I'm too busy right now. And we saw Steve. Steve's the mayor, everybody. And the first words out of John's mouth were like, oh, man, you had it today. And he's like, oh, my God, it was a hard week for him. So I appreciate you making time. I know you're busy. Is there anything else you want to say while we have the microphone in front of you? And you are always welcome to come on and talk about whatever it is, not just the city, but thanks for doing this. I know you don't have to, and I appreciate you doing it.
Hey, I can't go away because, I know you're down in LA. Go Giants. I think we're 6 weeks away or something like that from
like that. 71 like days, I think. Yeah.
Something before baseball. And then, of course, go Niners, beat the Sea Chickens. And,
that's right.
I'll even throw like go Rams for the people
in
the LA audience. That's fine. Like support the NFC West. So, and then that's great because the Niners can go down to Levi South and beat the Rams. So
there you go. Yeah. That would be great. Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, in-state rivalry is great, but ultimately, as long as California wins, we're all winning. So
I like
it's the right thing. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you again, Mario. I'll be right back.
Absolutely.
To you. Say goodbye. Everybody else, it's a Break It Down show is what we do. If you guys like us, subscribe. Get a hold of me, Pete at breakitdownshow.com. Let me know your idea for an episode. I'd love to hear about it. All right, I'll see you all later.